guys don't like sharing things that are yours, right? You know you do not like sharing. I tell you what, a big one for me is food. Anybody have people that just try to take your food, right? They're like, can I have a little bit of this? I'll tell you one person in my life that does that every time we go out to eat, my wife. I'll be getting food. We're at the same thing. She could have ordered what I got, but she didn't. She chose another option. But I'm out here like, all right, I get my plate of food. I'm thinking it's all for me. And unfortunately, my wife tells me, no, that's for both of us. And I'm like, bro, really? Really? We got to share? Anybody? Yeah, we don't like sharing, right? And maybe it's clothes, like somebody tries to, how many of you have siblings that they just try to take your clothes, they try to wear your clothes, but you don't like that. You're like, put my clothes back or get the roundhouse kick from God, right? No, I'm just playing. That's not theologically accurate. But anyways, right, we don't like sharing, but how many of you remember growing up, you always used to hear sharing is what? Caring. Sharing is, anybody else get mad when you heard that? Like, Mom, what you mean? Why'd you buy me this if this wasn't for me? Like, why you tell me to share my toys when, guess what? They're my toys, right? Anybody get frustrated like that, right? Or maybe I'm like, what is happening? And I remember just having different frustrations growing up and hearing that one-liner, sharing is caring. You know, and it's the things that we view as valuable in our lives that we usually try to keep to ourselves, right? Things that we hold as value. Like if it's like a random toothpick that's in your room, yeah, go ahead, bro, grab it. I don't care, right? But if it's like, girls, if it's like that dress that you're like, you touch it, you die. Right? Or maybe fellas, it's like maybe it's like a certain like sports item, and you're like, maybe it's like your baseball bat. You're like, if you touch it, this baseball bat, you will touch it, but it will be with me. Okay, maybe not. I don't know why I'm going violent here tonight. I'm sorry. I'm reeling it back in, but right. But the thing is the things that we consider valuable, we usually hold on to it, and we're not necessarily about sharing it with anybody, right? We're not about the sharing is caring type thing. You're like, no, that's dumb, that's stupid. If it's mine, it's mine. Don't touch it or get got, right? Anybody else like that? It's not just me? Okay, everybody's like, yeah. You always got a pocket knife on standby. You want to touch my stuff? No, okay. Again, with the violence, I'm bringing it back, right? So we usually hide the things that are valuable or try to hold on to it that we view as valuable because we don't want to share it. Why? Because it's ours and we want to keep it that way. Now on the flip side, everybody say the flip side. Let me tell you a little bit about how I used to perceive how people who I would know was talking and were dating in middle school and high school. And this is probably the same for here in this context in your generation, right? I remember the way that you could tell someone was talking is, especially when it's during like winter time or fall time, is when a girl's wearing some dude's jacket, right? It's like the oversized jacket, right? That you're like, that's not yours. But then you see like another guy walk beside them, you're like, Oh, okay. Like, you're like, I get it now, right? But you know good and well, right? If it's anybody else, don't touch my stuff. Don't touch my stuff. You get very territorial with it, like, don't touch it, right? But you see people talking, you're like, and then it's like, oh, no, because I care about you, like, okay, I'll give you, which I just think that's just a bad game plan to begin with. Can I tell you? Because what happens when you start giving your really nice stuff, right? And yeah, you were going great for the first week, maybe even a week and a half. But that second week comes around. How does that negotiation go with taking, okay, did you give it to her? How do you get your stuff back? Does anybody think these things through, right? No? Okay, just me. All right. If you need a lawyer to help, divvy it up, just contact me. I've watched a lot of legal shows recently. All right. Right? In another context, though, you would be upset, right? Or you're not trying to share. with somebody else. However, if you care about someone, there's a little bit of give, right? That I will give you this sweatshirt, right? Or I'll let you borrow it. That's the key word, people, borrow, not give, right? And see, when it comes to following Jesus, can I tell you that we have something valuable as followers of Jesus? We have good news. We have hope. And however, this hope is not meant to be a secret that you only hold on to and that you only talk about when you're at church, but it's something you should be sharing, right? You should be sharing. Can I tell you, I want our youth group, United Youth, to be known for sharing hope, for sharing the gospel, which means good news. I want us to know, people to know about that. Do you know your faith was not meant to just keep to yourself, right? It's not meant to, okay, I follow Jesus and I'm gonna live like this when I go throughout my week. And when I come to church, I run to the Father and leave church. Next, and then you come Sunday, Jesus over. And leave. Can I tell you, it's not meant to be like that. Your faith is not meant to be a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning thing, but that you are actually called to share the good news of Jesus, this hope. What is this good news? John 3:16, for God so what? Everybody say what? Loved the world that he gave his only, and that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. Good. Even if you're a non-Christian, you've heard John 3:16 somewhere, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Here's a glimpse of this good news. It's humanity's sin that drew us apart from God. Jesus comes on the scene to be the bridge by paying the price for our sin, by dying on the cross, being the bridge, by taking the debt that you and I deserved. And guess what? He took that penalty on himself to bridge us with the Father. But the great thing is that Jesus did not stay dead, but on the third day, he beat death, he resurrected. There's witnesses all around to prove that fact. And for those, and here's the thing, for those who follow him, Jesus said that, guess what? I'm going to leave my spirit in them. Hence how we can have this relationship with Jesus. And the truth sums up at the end of this, that Jesus is going and is coming back one day to redeem what was broken years and years ago. And here's why I'm sharing this, because I don't want you just to, this is good news, not just for Josh, a youth pastor, to share on Wednesday night, but this is good news for you Tirza, for you Raya, for you Lexi, for you Wyatt, for you to share with everyone in your context and in your sphere of influence. Right? I don't want you just to invite people to church to hear me talk about Jesus, but I want you to be able to confidently talk about the hope that you have. I want us to move from keeping the good news a secret to us finding confidence in sharing the good news. The title of my message tonight is Sharing is Caring. And I want to unpack this question: how do we share the good news? So I'm going to hit some more on the first part, on just more of kind of the inward battle that maybe we're facing. And then I'm going to hit on the second part some more practical and reference actually what Tripp just did a few moments ago. So I want to give you two thoughts. The first thought is this: care more about your friend's eternity than your insecurity. Y'all like, what? Oh, yeah. Care more about your friend's eternity than your insecurity. Care more about your friend's eternity than your insecurity. Romans chapter 1, verse 16, Paul writes this: for I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. I am not ashamed of the gospel because the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. Now, I want to look a little bit deeper in that passage and especially understand the historical context that Paul is speaking. See, Paul is in a Greco-Roman world. And in that world, there's a huge honor and there's a huge shame culture. Right? There's a huge honor culture and there's a huge shame culture. Hence why the language that Paul's saying, I'm not ashamed. Because guess what? From the outside looking in, Paul talking about this guy named Jesus, it looked like Jesus lost, right? If you don't have any context of the resurrection, it looks like Jesus was a fool. That Jesus, he did a couple of cool things, but he still died at the end, and we know that through his death, like he went through the worst embarrassing type of death that you can go through, being stripped of all of his clothes and being crucified in front of everybody. So we know that people, when Paul's talking about this, can look at Jesus and be like, man, that was a humiliating death. It would seem foolish and maybe even shameful to believe in him. See, many times I've found that some of us have stopped sharing or are not sharing the gospel because we either feel ashamed or embarrassed. If I share about Jesus, what will they think? If I share, will they not tell me things anymore? Right? And let me pause there. So there is a big lie that we want people's trust so much that it stops us from being able to communicate truth, right? And if you have an actual real friendship with someone, you can speak into their life and not worry about the consequences of them abandoning you in your friendship, right? But if you can't speak the truth and they're supposed to be your friend, right? Then you're kind of in a stagnant place in a relationship, right? And so that's a side trail. But I want to remind you that you have a friendship. Guess what? You don't need to worry about if they're going to tell me things anymore. They may not trust me with this anymore. Who cares? You're trying to, remember, kingdom mindset. I'm not so worried about how they're going to think of me now because I care more about their eternity. If I share, I will get labeled. If I share it, they will put me on this pedestal and wait for me to fall. Who do these statements all have to deal with? You. Yourself. Your insecurity. Not your friend's eternity, but your own insecurity. It has nothing to do with them, but it has everything to do with how you will feel. Right? See, here's the thing. Paul reminds us that guess what? It's the power of God that brings salvation. Guess what? It's not on you to save. Can I share this with you? The weight is not on you to save, but for you to share. The weight is not on you to save your friend, but for you to share. Saving is God's job. Sharing is your job. Matthew 28:19. Check this out. Therefore, go and make disciples. Everybody say disciples. Disciples means followers. Go make followers, not of you, but make followers of Jesus. See, the lie sometimes that we often tell ourselves as well is, I'm going to wait until I get perfect before I start sharing the good news. This is false. This is not good. A lot of us feel like, man, I just gave my life to Jesus 6 months ago. I'm still trying to take some steps. Guess what? You're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be something that you're going to have to continue to dig up in your life, to continue to address, to become holy like he is holy. So get this idea of perfection out of your mind, but focus on progression. That here's how you know when you're in a healthy place. Okay. When I stumble, when I make a mistake, am I feeling that conviction in my heart? Am I saying, God, I'm sorry, and getting back on track, right? These are things for us to be aware of because, guess what? You don't have to wait until you're perfect to start sharing this good news, right? Because if you're waiting until the perfect moment where you feel like you are on top of the world, guess what? Give it about 30 seconds and someone will push you off the cliff on that one. And you'll start back again. And it's not about you getting to perfection, but it's you striving to say, you know what, I'm still progressing. I'm still growing. That yes, I still have this struggle. Yes, I'm still dealing with this certain sin in my life, but I'm talking with my small group leader. I'm praying, and I'm still seeking Jesus. Guess what? That's good news right there. Why? Because in the world's eye, you should just give up, and that's just who you are, and that's what you just got to deal with. But with Jesus, there's hope that my current struggle is not going to be my forever reality. And so that hope should remind us to make sure that we are sharing that hope with someone else. That they don't got to wait till they're perfect before they talk to Jesus and step into a relationship with Jesus, but that Jesus wants them right where they are, right? And as they accept him right where they are, guess what? We serve a great God who will not leave them where they are. Are y'all following me? Yeah? See, you are never going to hit that perfect status. See, the truth and power of the gospel comes from the fact that you can't save yourself, that you need a savior. So when I share, I am pointing people to follow who? Follow. Just as I am. I'm pointing them to follow Jesus just as I am, and I'm inviting them to join me on this journey of being transformed by his love. Care more about your friend's eternity than your insecurity. Sharing is what? Caring. Second thought is this: how do we share the good news of the gospel? And Nicole, you can come up and play. See, Jesus is on the scene in Luke chapter 8. And there's this guy who is demon-possessed, wild. Jesus rolls up, casts the demon out. And I want to look at verse 39 because, yeah, casting the demon out was cool. But look how he talks to the man after this encounter. Jesus says this: return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. And the man went away proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. Check this out. Jesus tells the man to share. Share what he has done. Share about this amazing. And here's the thing. It's not like we don't get that much left in the text. But here's the thing, the man just had a bunch of demons cast out of him. He probably not just outright perfect anymore, right? He's got a long way to go, right? But that doesn't stop him stop Jesus from encouraging him to share what did happen. What did happen in your life, why when you said, I'm gonna follow Jesus? What did happen? See, I've been reading in the book of Acts, and Paul, this guy named Paul, he wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, and he is literally finding himself in jail several times. And Paul's response every time they're, hey, what'd you do? Paul gives the same line. I'm literally reading through his story in the book of Acts, and it's the same line every single time. I used to persecute Christians, then I met Jesus, and now I share Jesus with everyone I meet. Literally, that's like a summarized version. I did this. I met this guy. Now I do this. Here is some practical steps for you learning how to share your faith. And we can put up on the screen. You unpack the question of, what did my life look like before Jesus? What did my life look like when I surrendered my life to Jesus? And what has my life looked like since following Jesus? Before, what happened when I surrendered? What made me make that decision? And then what it's looked like since. If you need to take a picture of that, do that. And I'll give you an example, right? we just unpacked Tripp's story. I asked him what his life was before Jesus, how did he come to surrendering to Jesus, and then what his life looked like being with Jesus, right? I'll give you an example of my own story. Grew up in a Christian home, always was familiar with the guy named Jesus, did all the church stuff, went to every church camp. It wasn't until 10th grade where my youth pastor shared a word and he said, show me your 5 best friends, I'll show you where you'll be in 5 years. It totally wrecked my train of thought of just because I started thinking about who I was hanging out with. I went to my bed, sat in there, and literally was up all night, and I just asked Jesus, if you're real, I just need you to do something in my life. And, and guess what? I mean, it's not like we can command Jesus to do stuff, but he did do something. And he just gave me a peace in my heart, and there was an assurance. And from that moment on, I said, you know what? I'm going all in. So I started singing on our youth worship team. I started preaching, and I was on a rotation as a 16-year-old. And from that, my life with Jesus has had its ups and downs. But like I said earlier, he's been present with me every step of the way. And there's been so many beautiful and kind things that he's been able to show and give me in this life. What did I just do? I shared with you what happened before. What was my life before Jesus? I shared how I met Jesus. And thirdly, I shared what my life looked like after knowing Jesus. And I want to encourage you with this. Don't underestimate your story. Don't underestimate your story. I used to think when I would hear people give testimonies for testimony nights, it's usually like somebody who was an alcoholic for 45 years and just suddenly stopped like drinking alcohol, right? Or like someone that was like some crazy story. And not taking away from them, but I'm like, do I gotta drink alcohol for 45 years? Like, and get like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, do I have to snort cocaine to have a story? No, that's not logical, right? But I'm saying that because sometimes we think that we need to have this big, powerful story. And when your story is like, yeah, I have a good home life. I just really never went after Jesus for myself. And that's a good story. Why? Because it's your story. It's how you came to know who Jesus is. Don't underestimate your story. See, Revelations 12:11, we're reminded that we have overcome the world by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. We've overcome the world by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, and the word of our testimony, our story. See, share how the good news has impacted you, because sharing is. See, I want to share just briefly just a story of a student. I'm not going to mention their names, and we're going to wrap up here. And they texted me because they were super excited last week because they invited a friend of theirs, and they were just super excited. They texted me and they called me that they're coming. They're coming. They're excited, and it was cool because the people actually did show up, right? People who are not a part of a church, and they did show up, and those people maybe even in the room tonight. But I'm like thinking about this person that called me. I'm like, this is the most excited I've seen them in forever about their faith. And you know why? When you start sharing, you get excited because you're living out the purpose you were intended for. You're being on mission by following the Great Commission that Jesus gave in Matthew 28. And it brings you alive because there is something special that just happens within your heart. You kind of get this like, okay, let's go. When you go from Wednesday night to Thursday morning, but instead living like this every single day of your life and sharing with anyone who is able to listen and praying for the right times to come about for you to share. But it's exciting because no longer did it just become a 2-hour faith on Wednesday night and a 1.5-hour faith on a Sunday morning, but it became a lifestyle of sharing hope because you know that hope. See, Let's not keep the good news of Jesus to ourselves, but let's share the good news of Jesus. Because can I tell you why? There are people who need this hope and who need to hear about this hope, not from me, but from you. It's gonna hit different. I'm just a guy who just yells hey a bunch and people think that he's weird for a little bit, before they get to know him. Yeah, don't act like y'all, some of y'all, now you know me, but first you were like, why is he so extroverted? Does he always smile like that? Okay. You're not supposed to laugh at that, okay? We get it, guys, we get it. Fake ones out here, no, I'm just playing. But people need to hear the gospel from you, so hopefully you care more about your friend's eternity than your insecurity, and then you start sharing the good news in the practical ways of what was your life before Jesus, how'd you come to know Jesus, and what does your life look like since knowing Jesus. Can we do this? Can we stand tonight?